Hello, this is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the week ending. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today. British Prime Minister Theresa May has promised an extra £1.3 billion in funding for the NHS this year. Mrs. May, who acknowledged that the NHS is under huge pressure, was reacting to Jeremy Corbyn's questions about NHS crisis due to funding cuts and the lack of adequate social care funding across all the boroughs.
9 out of 10 NHS trusts say their hospitals have been at unsafe levels of overcrowding. 1 in 6 accident and emergency units in England are set to be closed or downgraded. Could the Prime Minister please explain how closing A&E departments will tackle overcrowding and ever-growing waiting lists?
First of all, can I extend my thanks, and I'm sure that of the whole House, to the hard-working staff in the NHS who do a great job day in and day out treating patients. Yes, we recognise there are heavy pressures on the NHS. That's why this year we're funding the NHS at £1.3 billion more than the Labour Party promised at the last election. He refers specifically to accident and emergency. What is our response in accident and emergency? We see 600 more A&E consultants, 1,500 more A&E doctors and 2,000 more paramedics. It's not about standing up and making a soundbite and asking a question. It's about delivering results, and that's what this Conservative government is doing.
Mr. Speaker, congratulating A&E staff is one thing, paying them properly is another. I hope she managed to see the BBC report on the Royal Blackburn A&E department, which showed that people had to wait up to 13 hours and 52 minutes to be seen. A major cause of the pressure on A&Es is the £4.6 billion cut in the social care budget since 2010. Earlier this week, Liverpool's very esteemed adult social care director, Samia Kalakachi, resigned, saying, "Frankly, I can't see social services surviving after 2 years. That's the absolute maximum. People are suffering, and we're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg." Mr. Speaker, what advice does the government have to the people of Liverpool in this situation?
The Right Honourable Order. It's bad enough when members who are within the curtilage of the chamber shout. Those who are not absolutely should not do so. It's a discourtesy to the House of Commons. Nothing more, nothing less. Please don't do it. The Prime Minister.
Well, he referred at an early stage of his question to Blackburn. I'm happy to say that compared to 2010, there are 129 more hospital doctors and 413 more nurses in the Blackburn East Lancashire Hospital's NHS Trust. He then went on to talk about waiting times, and waiting times can be an issue. Where is it that you wait a week longer for pneumonia treatment? That you wait a week longer for heart disease treatment? That you wait 7 weeks longer for cataract treatment, 11 weeks longer for hernia treatment, and 21 weeks longer for a hip operation? It's not in England, it's in Wales. Who's in power in Wales? Labour.
Mr. Speaker, my question was about the comments from Samia Kalakachi in Liverpool and why the people of Liverpool are having to suffer these great cuts. Liverpool has asked to meet the government on 4 occasions. The crisis is so bad that until yesterday, Mr. Speaker, David Hodge, the Conservative leader of Surrey County Council, planned to hold a referendum for a 15% increase in council tax. And at the last minute, it was called off. Can the Prime Minister tell the House whether or not a special deal was done for Surrey?
The decision as to whether or not to hold a referendum in Surrey is entirely a matter for the local authority in Surrey County Council. But I say the Right Honourable Gentleman has raised the issue of social care, which we've exchanged on across this dispatch box before. And as I've said before, we do need to find a long-term sustainable solution for social care in this country. So I recognise the short-term pressures. That's why we have enabled local authorities to put more money into social care. We have provided more money. Over the next 2 years, 900 million more pounds will be available for social care. But we also need to look at ensuring that good practice is spread across the whole of the country. We can look at places like Barnsley, North Tyneside, St Helens, Rutland. Towards the end of last year, there were virtually no delayed discharges attributable to social care in those councils. But we also need to look long-term, and that's why the Cabinet Office is driving a review with the relevant departments to find a sustainable solution, which the Labour Party ducked for far too long.
Mr. Speaker, my question was whether there had been a special deal done for Surrey. The leader said they'd had many conversations with the government. We know they have, because I've been leaked copies of texts sent by the Tory leader David Hodge, intended for somebody called Nick, who works for ministers in the Department of Communities and Local Government. And these texts read, "I'm advised that DCLG officials have been working on a solution and that you will be contacting me to agree a memorandum of understanding." Will the government now publish this memorandum of understanding? And while they're about it, will all councils be offered the same deal?
What we have given all councils is the opportunity to raise a 3% precept on the council tax for that to go into social care. He talks about understanding. What the Labour Party fails to understand,
Order! There's far too much noise. Mr. Pound, calm yourself. You're supposed to be a senior statesman. And order! And Mr. Rotherham, you should reserve your shouting for the stands at Anfield. The Prime Minister.
As I say, all councils have the opportunity to raise the 3% precept, to put that funding into the provision of social care. What the Labour Party fails to understand is that this is not just a question of looking at money, it is a question of looking at spreading best practice and finding a sustainable solution. And I have to say to him that if we look at social care provision across the entire country, the last thing social care providers need is another one of Labour's bouncing cheques.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if it's anything to do with the fact that the Chancellor and Health Secretary both represent Surrey constituencies. But, Mr. Speaker, there was a second text from Surrey County Council leader to Nick, and in the second text it says the numbers you indicated are the numbers that I understand are acceptable for me to accept and call off the R. Now, I've been reading a bit of John le Carre, and apparently R means referendum. It's very subtle, all this. And he goes on to say in his text to Nick, if it is possible for that info to be sent to myself, I can then revert back soonest. Really want to kill this off. So how much did the government offer Surrey to kill this off? And is the same sweetheart deal on offer to every council facing the social care crisis created by her government?
I've made clear to the Right Honourable Gentleman what has been made available to every council, which is the ability to raise the precept. And I have to say to him...
Order! As colleagues know, I never mind how long Prime Minister's questions take. The questions must be heard and the answers must be heard. The Prime Minister.
I have to say to him, he comes to the dispatch box making all sorts of claims. Yet again, what we get from Labour are alternative facts. What they really need is an alternative leader.
Mr. Speaker, my question was, what deal had been offered to Surrey that got them to call off a referendum, and will the same deal be offered to every other council going through a social care crisis? Mr. Speaker, hospital wards are overcrowded. 1 million people aren't getting the care they need, and family members, mostly women, are having to give up work to care for loved ones. Every day that the Prime Minister fails to act, this crisis gets worse. So will she finally come clean and provide local authorities with the funding they need to fund social care properly, so that our often elderly and vulnerable people can be treated with the support and dignity that they deserve in a civilised society?
The deal that is on offer to all councils is the one that I've already set out. But let me just be very clear with the Right Honourable Gentleman, because as ever he stands up and consistently asks for more spending, more money, more funding. What he always fails to recognise is that you can only spend money on social care and on the National Health Service if you have a strong economy to deliver the wealth that you need. When I talk about £500 billion, that's the money we'll be spending on the NHS this Parliament. When Labour talk about £500 billion, it's the money they want to borrow. Conservatives investing in the NHS, Labour bankrupting Britain.
Meanwhile, members of the British Parliament have voted on Wednesday in support of the Brexit bill. The overwhelming support for the legislation has brought the government closer to triggering Article 50 by March.
In their final vote on the Brexit bill, Parliament members agreed overwhelmingly to begin the process of separating Britain from the 28-nation bloc.
The ayes to the right, 494. The noes to the left, 122. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
The bill will be debated in the House of Lords after its members return from recess on February 20th. It is expected to pass, enabling Prime Minister Theresa May to trigger formal Brexit talks as she planned by the end of March. She will do this by invoking Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which Britain signed in 2007, along with 26 other European nations. Britain will then be given a 2-year window to negotiate its future relationship with the European Union.
We believe it is possible, within the 2-year time frame, to get the agreement not just for our withdrawal from the European Union, but also the trade arrangements that will ensure that we have a strong strategic partnership with the European Union in the future.
Britain held a referendum last June on whether to leave the European Union or stay. 52% of the voters chose to leave, while 48% voted to stay. The result surprised many people and sparked protests, especially in regions where Brexit had little support, like Scotland.
We are ensuring that we are working closely with the Scottish Government and indeed with the other devolved administrations as we take this matter forward. I would just remind the Right Honourable Gentleman of two things. First of all, the Supreme Court was very clear that the Scottish Parliament does not have a veto on the triggering of Article 50.
Waves of immigrants trying to reach Western Europe and economic problems in some member nations have fueled populist movements across Europe, with eyes now trained on Britain to see how it fares after Brexit.
Now to the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump has promised to guarantee the safety of America at all costs. Mr. Trump stated that his administration will make historic financial investment in the U.S. armed forces and stand with those who stand in defense of freedom.
As your president, I have no higher duty than to protect the American people. Highest duty we have. I said it the other night. Great Supreme Court nominee. You all saw that. But I said to myself, perhaps the only thing more important to me definitely is the defense of our nation. Supreme Court's so important, but we have to defend our nation. And we will do that, believe me. We will do that. And each and every one of you is central to that mission. The men and women serving in CENTCOM and SOCOM have poured out their hearts and souls for this country. They've really experienced things that very few people get to experience. You've shed your blood across the continents and the oceans. You've engaged the enemy on distant battlefields, toiled in the burning heat and bitter cold, and sacrificed everything so that we can remain safe and strong and free. Our administration will always honor our sacred bond to those who serve, and we will never, ever forget you. Believe me, we will never, ever forget you. We will ensure that the men and women of our military have the tools, equipment, resources, training, and supplies you need to get the job done. You've seen me say we've been depleted. Our Navy is at a point almost as low as World War I. It's a long time ago. It's a long time ago. It's not going to happen anymore, folks. It's not going to happen anymore. Not with me. But we will ensure no taxpayer dollars are wasted. I have already saved more than $700 million when I got involved in the negotiation on the F-35. You know about that. And I want to thank Lockheed Martin, and I want to thank Boeing, and I want to thank all of the companies that have really opened up. And when I say opened up, Rick Scott understands this very well, opened up and cut their prices, okay? Because that's what they did. And we've got that program. It's going to be back in really great shape from really being very troubled. And we are going to be taking care of our great veterans. We will make a historic financial investment in the armed forces of the United States and show the entire world that America stands with those who stand in defense of freedom. We have your back every hour, every day, now and always. That also means getting our allies to pay their fair share. It's been very unfair to us. We strongly support NATO. We only ask that all of the NATO members make their full and proper financial contributions to the NATO alliance, which many of them have not been doing. Many of them have not been even close, and they have to do that. Central Command and Central Operations Command are at the very center of our fight against radical Islamic terrorism. America stands in awe of your courage. Those serving at CENTCOM have bravely fought across the theater of war in the Middle East and bravely battled a vicious enemy that has no respect for human life. Today, we express our gratitude to everyone serving overseas, including all of our military personnel in Afghanistan. SOCOM has dispatched its legendary warriors to the most secret, sensitive, and daring missions in defense of the United States of America. No enemy stands a chance against our special forces. Not even a chance. They don't have a chance. And that's the way we're going to keep it. And you're going to be better off because you're going to have the finest equipment known to man. Going to be better off. The proof that our nation has been blessed by God, look no further than the men and women of the United States military. They are the greatest fighters and the greatest force of justice on the face of the earth, and that the world has ever known. The challenges facing our nation, nevertheless, are very large, very, very large. We're up against an enemy that celebrates death and totally worships destruction. You've seen that. ISIS is on a campaign of genocide, committing atrocities across the world. radical Islamic terrorists are determined to strike our homeland, as they did on 9/11, as they did from Boston to Orlando to San Bernardino. And all across Europe, you've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that. So today we deliver a message in one very unified voice to these forces of death and destruction. America and its allies will defeat you. We will defeat them. We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country. We're not going to allow it. You've been seeing what's been going on over the last few days. We need strong programs so that people that love us and want to love our country and will end up loving our country are allowed in, not people that want to destroy us and destroy our country.
Meanwhile, the ongoing legal challenge of U.S. President Trump's travel ban may end up in the Supreme Court. The legal battle is a test of how far presidential authority through executives may be applied. Jim Mallon examines the implication of the legal battle for President Trump.
For President Trump, the executive order tightening immigration is all about keeping Americans secure.
It was done for the security of our nation, the security of our citizens, so that people come in who aren't going to do us harm. And that's why it was done.
We are the resistance. Let us rise up.
But Trump's order sparked demonstrations around the country. Democrats complained the president was exceeding his power, including Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
We need Republicans to set aside partisan considerations in favor of doing what's best for the country.
Opponents say the immigration order is discriminatory and unconstitutional. But Trump may have history on his side when it comes to presidential action to regulate immigration, says legal expert Dan McLaughlin.
So, because the president is relying on authority that has been delegated to him by Congress, he also has very broad authority, whether you think his policy is wise or not, very broad authority to act within the law.
The federal courts will now decide if Trump has gone beyond his presidential authority in issuing his executive orders, says expert Paul Schiff-Berman.
The issue, I think, is whether these executive orders go farther, and I think that they do, both in their scope and in the incredibly ill-considered way in which they've been issued.
Before turning to politics, Trump built a reputation as a dynamic businessman with a brand known internationally. But now as president, dealing with the limits of executive authority and the checks applied by Congress and the court system could prove to be a challenge, says American University expert James Thurber.
We have separation of powers in our democracy. It's slow, it's deliberative, it's transparent. As a businessman, he likes to say, you know, you're fired, or let's get this done, let's move ahead. Well, in a democracy, you can't do that. That's going to frustrate him.
A lower court ruling temporarily halting Trump's immigration order led to many happy scenes at airports as families were reunited. But it's likely the Supreme Court will have the last word on Trump's travel ban and on the issue of presidential authority in this case.
With that, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being part of the program. I'm Tunde Alabi. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye. Efforts to reach the African and other ethnic communities in the United Kingdom with greater impacts and create the platform to hear your silent and unheard views in this hugely growing community in the United Kingdom. Our channel, Ben TV, presents to you another live current affairs television program. Our focus on the program is to review and discuss issues around the diaspora community in the UK. The program offers you that unrestricted voice on issues affecting you in the UK. Join us live every Monday at 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Another business segment of Dialogue in Diaspora, 2 to 3 p.m. every Monday. But guess what? You know you can be part of the program. Just send us an email at bentelevisionuk@gmail.com. Dialogue in Diaspora, your voice, your opinion on our TV.